Hi, Robert Rotenberg here. Quick intro to my fourth 15-minute Monday night session held on June 8th, 2020, talking about my fourth novel, Stranglehold. Enjoy. By the way, she only started writing late in life. She wrote that murder mystery is not about murder, but the restoration of order. Crime fiction confirms our belief that despite much evidence to the contrary, that we live in a rational, comprehensive, and moral universe. I knew a Crown attorney who was addicted to reading murder mysteries, and she said to me when things were really bad, she would go to a bookstore and just read the endings of a few books, just to make sure that the world had some order in it. Now, if you think that sounds kind of academic, I actually found a PhD thesis, a few hundred-word thesis called The Theology of in Suspense, How the Detective Fiction of P.D. James Provokes Theological Thought. Here's another PhD thesis, Nietzsche, Man, and Modernism, a framework for morality in Raymond Chandler's detective fiction. Here's another one. There's a book called The Ethicist, Murder, Mystery, and Moral Imagination. This is a bit long, but I think it's a terrific quote. However, those of you who do not want to spend their time wading through the writings of Kant, Miller, and Aristotle, Murder Mysteries offer a surprisingly good substitute. Indeed, I believe far from offering trivial entertainment or titillating descriptions of violence, the best detective fiction offers a vision of moral world in which our most mundane choices matter, where good and evil are concepts that must be taken seriously by the characters, the writers, and the readers, in which moral order is both visible to those who look and important. So why am I talking about morality? Well, I want to go back to Stray Bullets, the third book, which I was talking about last week, because I think the essence, and instead of just talking about opening chapters, I want to now talk about how you close a chapter and how you set up a moral dilemma for a character. Because what distinguishes a book is not just caring about the characters, but watching them make decisions. And so if you remember, I'm going to go back a little bit. In Stray Bullets, it started like this. I'm just going to read a little bit. It was bad enough working in the kitchen of a donut shop for minimum wage, but having to wear a hairnet was even worse. And you'll remember, I described the character. His name wasn't Jose Sanchez, but Dragomir Ozera, and who wasn't a chef in Portugal, as he told his employer, but was a Romanian linguistics student with a warrant out for his arrest, fucking hairnet. So, you know the book is called Stray Bullets, and I set up a cold night in November, and obviously something bad happens. And I don't want to give away too much for those of you who haven't read it, but he is the only witness to a shooting. And we know that he's the only witness. And he's been threatened by two of the people, one of whom maybe is the shooter. So what's he going to do? So this is how I end the chapter. Ozera breathed. It felt like for the first time in hours. But Larkin, that's one of the people, was still there, standing in the same spot by the bushes, with a gun in his hand. Voices were shouting. Ozera stopped breathing. He tried not to move, but he couldn't take his eyes off Larkin and the gun. Larkin shook his head. Then he turned towards Ozera. There was just enough light for their eyes to meet. Ozera froze. Please, he prayed, please. Somewhere in the distance, a siren screeched, the sound cutting the air like a pierced arrow. That's not a great simile. Still looking at Ozera, Larkin stumbled back and was illuminated by the parking lot lights. He teetered on his feet like a drunk college kid coming out of a bar. I think that's a better simile. Then pulled up his shirt and stuffed the weapon down the front of his pants. Ozera's heart was pounding like a freight train. Now, if I could rewrite this book, I would take that simile out. Call 911, someone yelled. This seemed to jolt Larkin. His head jerked towards the front door where the father was screaming. Then he bolted, running across the front of the lot, out onto the street, his hair trailing behind him like a comet's tail. I do like that symbol. Ozera stepped out from his hiding place. Right in front of the door, the man knelt down beside his little boy, who was lying motionless on the ground. "My son, help," the man pleaded. Up the street, Ozera heard the sirens approaching. "Run, Dragomir, run," he told himself. A second siren was coming from the other direction. So right now, in TV writing, they call it raising the stakes. Right now, he has to make a decision. He's got a warrant out for his arrest. And frankly, if the ambulance wasn't coming and he was to take off, you would hate him as a character. So I had to have the ambulance coming so we don't hate him. Once you hate a character, you can't get back to liking him, but he has to make a choice. So you as a reader are saying, stay, stay. What's he do? A second siren was coming from the other direction. If he left now, he would lose 6 days' pay, plus his fake ID. He'd need to get another name, whole new identity. Better than getting caught. Better than Dewey and Larkin finding out who he was. So the stakes are higher for him, the danger for him. He pulled off his name tag with Jose on it and stuffed it into his pocket. The snow was starting to really come down. A frozen shiver skittered through his whole body. His head felt itchy. What was it? Oh, he remembered, the damn hairnet. He ripped the stupid thing off his head, threw it into the bushes, and ran towards the clustering darkness. So he's now made a moral decision. And you know in the book that decision is going to come back to haunt him. And you also know that the hairnet's going to be something important. So that now brings me to my fourth book, which is called Stranglehold. So the first 3 books, I start with minor characters who come upon the scene. In the first 2, they come upon a murder. In Stray Bullets, you actually see what happens in real time. In this book, I decided to finally start with one of the main characters, probably the main character in the series. One thing is when you're writing a series, you have a bit of a problem, which is if you introduce a character too much, it's boring for the people who know the series. And if you don't introduce them, people who are reading the book don't know what you're talking about. And this is just a little language thing. I had to deal with the term homicide detective, which is a really clunky set of words, and I didn't want them in the first sentence. So I'm just going to read a little bit at the beginning of the book. This was not the way Ari Green had expected to be spending his Monday morning. No self-respecting homicide detective would be caught dead driving a motor scooter. And yet, here he was, putt-putting along Kingston Road, home to a string of low-rent strip malls, tax fund refund specialists, tired-looking furniture stores, and cheapo motels that rented out rooms by the week, by the day, by the half day, type of place cops called have-a-naps. The day's predetermined destination was a Maple Leaf Motel. Maybe it would be a step up from the inappropriately named Luxury Motel, the tacky place where they met last week. So in this book, I changed things because without giving the book away, he comes upon a dead body. And we know right away that he's not the killer. So the question isn't whether he's going to be able to find the killer. We know right away that he's not the killer. But then he has some decisions to make. Just give me 1 second. I think I lost my page. Here we go. He's in a little motel room, and then he has to think, what's he going to do? He had to think. He had to call 911. He's a cop. He had to call 911. How could this be? Tears jumped into his eyes. His stomach lurched, and he started to gag. He turned away from and felt for his phone. Wait, the bathroom door right in front of him was closed. Killer Maybe he was in there. He lifted his heavy boot, anger coursing through his body, and kicked in the door. So I start with action. He hasn't made a decision, but wait a second. He still hasn't called 911. So in chapter 3, we see him again. And he's about to call 911. Time had lost all meaning. At last he got up, careful not to disturb anything. He took a step back and reached again for his cell phone. He heard a sound, something scratching against the outside of the front door, which he hadn't closed behind him. Someone was out there. He jammed the phone back in his pocket. It was 2 steps to the foot of the bed and 3 more across the door. He flung it open, scanned the little courtyard. Something caught his eye in the passageway, a person fleeing. All he saw was the heel of a shoe before it disappeared around the corner. He ran to the street, puffing hard under the bicycle helmet, the visor crashing down with his motion. There's no one in front of the motel. Out on Kingston Road, 3 lanes of traffic whizzed in both directions. To his left was an empty lot. To his right was a strip mall where he parked his scooter. No one was there either. So we think, okay, time for him to pick up the phone and dial 911. But then, without giving too much away, he sees a bunch of police cars coming. And he starts to think, wait a second, this doesn't make sense. The timing doesn't make sense. Maybe he's being set up. So all the while, I think the readers say, Ari, just phone 911, phone 911. What's he do? His shoulders slump. Somehow, I don't want to get too much away, he must have been set up. Green had seen this too many times in his career. Someone being set up at a murder scene. He pocketed his cell phone and jumped on his scooter. So he takes off. Now, I'm going to transition a little bit from talking about moral choices to talking about plot structure. One thing that I did in this book, sometimes writers talk about the V. So I hate the term protagonist, but something happens, it's kind of like a Hitchcock film, and everything just gets worse and worse and worse. And the main character keeps making worse and worse decisions. And at the bottom of the V is when the characters hits bottom. Now in this book, we know, we being the reader know, that Ari Green is innocent. So this is what happens right at the center of the book. Up you can see it's at the center. Green has just been to a lawyer's office and he's walked down the stairs. Green made his way down the long staircase to the street. The morning sun was out and it hit him in the eyes. His mind was reeling, so it took a moment for him to focus on the man standing right outside the door. Detective Green, Daniel Kennicott said. Hello, Daniel. Kennicott's face looked ashen. 2 uniformed police officers moved in on either side of him. Green knew them both. To his left was Arnold Linsmore, a big lug of a man whom Green had been friendly with since they were in police college. To his right, Clyde Newberg, who was a nasty character in the book. And in case some of you don't know, Daniel Kennicott is one of the other main characters in the book. Good cop, bad cop, Green thought. Nicely played, Daniel. Hi, Arnie, he said to Linsmore. Hi, Ari, Linsmore looked grim. Clyde, Green said to Newberg. Ari, Newberg replied with a snarl. Kennicott put his hand on Green's shoulder and looked him straight in the eye. Exactly how I taught him to do it, Green thought, as he heard the young man he'd mentored for 5 years, making him into a very good homicide detective, say, Ari Green, you were under arrest for murder. So there we are, halfway through the book. We know he's innocent. He's made all these mistakes. And in the other half, he has to redeem himself. Not just legally, but if you read the book, you'll see he also has to redeem himself morally. Okay, there's one more thing I could do, but I think that would take too long. I think I'll leave that for next week. Okay, so next week I'm going to do kind of a best of. A lot of you have sent me in answers and questions and the description of Mr. Singh. So I'm going to go over a lot of those things. I'm going to go back to Stray Bullets and talk about a moral decision that a minor character has to make at the end of the book. and then I'm going to give you guys a sneak preview of the new book. So please don't tell my publisher I'm doing that. Okay? Listen, I really appreciate people coming in on a beautiful Monday night. Thank you very much.